our physician says, we are constantly bombarded by warnings based on initial studies, tentative conclusions about this or that food having adverse health effects. So that we're getting some context here.
Mhm.
If the medical establishment wants people to pay attention to health warnings, it should announce only conclusive results, the kind that can come only from definitive studies. So this is a claim, because we have the physician recommending something. And then they say, after all, people who are constantly subjected to fire drills eventually come to ignore the fire alarms. That's the reasoning.
Okay.
So it's like, and I think, conclusion, reasoning, like that's part of the IRAC structure. We got part of that in there.
That's true.
Um, and so they're asking us, what is this statement plays which of the following roles? So that statement is that people who are constantly subjected to fire drills eventually come to ignore the fire alarm, that last part.
That's the last part. Okay.
So what's that doing for our argument right now? Before you even look at the answer choices, what is that functioning as?
Well, it's giving you more information of what you're looking for. It's playing more of a bigger role.
Yeah, so it's so they give us the claim, so like you should only announce conclusive results. Here's an example of why you should do that. So it's supporting that conclusion. That's what we call a premise. And so
Okay.
it's really supporting the reasoning. So we're
Okay.
trying to think about, like, it's also a pretty nice I think did you say example? It's like it's giving us like an example. Um so we're going to look for something in our answer choices that it gets to like this idea of that it's supporting the main claim, that it's an example of what's going on, um, something that's going to help support it. Because if we see something, they might try to say it's a conclusion. I'm like, okay, we know it's not a conclusion.
Conclusion, right.
Um, but it's good to try to kind of guess what could it be before you even start looking at your choices, because that's going to help you. We're good at identifying the roles. We're good at identifying pieces of the argument. So if we can do that beforehand, we know what to look for.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Let me read the statement again. The statement that people who are constantly subjected to the fire drills eventually come to ignore the fire alarm plays with one of the following roles in the physician's argument. Okay. It is presented as an example of the sort of warning referred to in the argument's overall conclusion. We're going to eliminate that one. A.
Good.
B is it is a statement that plays no logical role in the argument, but that instead serves to impugn the motives of the medical establishment. Now, I'm going to eliminate B. It is an analogically offered in support of the argument's overall conclusion. I'm going to eliminate C.
Okay.
D is it is an analogy that forms part of a specific objection to the argument's overall conclusion. I'm going to get rid of D and I'm going to go with E.
So what does E say?
E says it is analogic offered to clarify the distinction the physician makes between an initial study and a definitive study.
Do you like that answer?
We are constantly aware of awareness based on initial studies. I do.
So it's not quite, because the physician isn't going between an initial study and a definitive study in this sentence. They do it elsewhere. Like they do say, okay, you should only look at definitive studies. We actually don't know if they mention initial studies at all, but that's context. But we're thinking about this one sentence specifically. And the
Initial.
analogy is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, well, up in the top it says we are constantly bombarded by warnings based on initial studies,
Okay, yeah.
tentative conclusions.
Mm-hmm. So like with this sentence, this idea about the fire alarm, it's not clarifying the distinction. It's just like it's supporting the reasoning of why you should take this course of action about definitive studies. It's not really helping us understand what the difference is between the two. Our answer is actually going to be C. So it is an analogy. So like you got down to C, D, and E, and so it
Mm.
was an analogy of some sort, but it's like super vague. It's a super vague, and sometimes our vague answer choices are going to be really helpful. It's generally
Ah,
supporting our conclusion because it's reasoning. Reasoning supports our conclusion. Premises support our conclusion.
okay.
And so sometimes we can get really stuck. So like, this doesn't look like a flashy answer. Most of the time, it's not going to be a flashy answer.
Oh God, help me get through
Okay,
this.
it's okay. It's okay. It's gonna
Okay.
be good. It's gonna be good. So we're just thinking, okay, like if you can identify that it's reasoning, then you can like kind of link in your head, okay, if it's a reasoning, it's going to support the conclusion. And that's all we need to know.
Reasoning
Like,
support the conclusion.
yeah, I like to say like conclusions are the things being supported. So if everything points to the conclusion, like or it points to a sentence, you know it's going to be the conclusion for sure. We also say if it's a premise, if it's a reasoning, if it's an example, those all work in support of the conclusion. They are the things holding the conclusion up. They're like the legs of the chair.
Okay, so you said the premise
Mm-hmm.
supports the conclusion.
Yep, the premise is doing the supporting, and the conclusion is supported. It's like the premises, each premise is a leg on the chair. The conclusion, we are the conclusion, sitting on the chair.
Got
So,
you.
so
Okay.
yeah, you
Okay.
can kind of think of like, asking yourself, like if it's asking you to find the main conclusion or if it's asking for a role, you can ask yourself, is it supporting something or is it being supported? Or is it just extraneous information that's helping us get the lay of the land, like that introductory matter?